So let's begin with the overview page, which is the first page you're going to see upon successful loading of a data set. Okay, so what we can see here are some good high-level statistics about this insurance claims process and some metrics and feedback as to how the operation has been running. So we've got 550,000 events roughly in our data set that relate to 31,596 timelines. Now, in this use case, since we're tracking auto claims, a timeline is going to be synonymous with an instance of a claim. So we've got 31,596 claims in our working data set that span a time range of 531 days. So roughly a year and a half's worth of data. Some other numbers we've got here, 31 different events that could have occurred. We start to initiate ourselves to those things that are occurring in the process, and you get a full list of all the different 31 possible different events that could have occurred, and you can also see which events are more commonly happening than others, so I can sort them by their number of occurrences. So you can see here the name of the event and then how commonly that event occurs. Also, how many different timelines or claims does that specific event affect? You see, maybe some of these events could happen more than once per claim. You'll also notice as we go through this, I've got icons or a visual depiction of what happened at that step assigned to a few of these critical workflow steps. It's not all of the steps here. Some of them will have the default circle with the number in it. And just to be clear, when you first initially load data into a project, all of your events are going to be alphabetically assigned a number. Okay, that number doesn't mean that that's the order that they occur in. It's really a trivial number that gets assigned. But what you can do here is assign icons or coloring to signify more clearly, visually, what happened at that stage. So all you need to do is select that circle, upload an icon, or choose to use a coloring, and set it as the visual for that specific step. Okay, and you can see some of the icons that I've used in this project. So that's how you create those, and you'll see where these come to play as we go through the timelines and other areas of the tool. It's a nice way for the user to quickly pick up on exactly what's happening with the business process visually. All right, so that's our look at the different possible events that could have occurred. You've also got project statistics over here, things around how many objects are created within this project, and we'll touch on this in more detail when we talk about the administrative pieces. We'll get into exactly what these three bars mean when we start to talk about filtering and sets of data. But some of the other metrics to describe them, we've got average and range of duration of the process. This is telling us on average it takes us 23 days to process a claim. It could go anywhere from 6 hours to 15 months. Number of events which have occurred. So telling us on average it takes us 17 steps to close out a claim, but it could be as few as 30, as few as 3, as many as 30. The other thing to point out here from a configuration perspective, so I assigned some icons. I've also got some example costs built in here so that we can use the cost calculation function, and we'll talk about exactly how they are defined. But you've got these cost metrics which tell you for this full populations of claims processing, it's cost $4 million overall to the organization to process those based on the costs we've input, with an average of $123 per claim. And you can see the range there of the possible costs. So we'll talk about that a bit more later on. Lastly, we've got the distribution of first and last events, where we most commonly both beginning or ending any one of these different claims, and a full frequency breakdown as to how often in any case one of these events has come first or last. 89% of the time we start as a first notification of loss. There are another 10% that could start with a coverage confirm step. There's a little bit more variability here in the last event, and so you can select on either one of these and get a full breakdown of all the different possible steps that have come last in a claim, along with how frequently that might occur. And if I'm curious, let's say something stands out to me here, I want to hone in on something as to how could this ever come last, or how could this ever happen initially, right? I can deselect any of them, select the one I'm interested in. When I apply this as a filter, my setup diary is my last step. Now I'm filtered down and just only looking at the 422 claims that where setup diary occurred as the last step. And this could be because the claim is in flight, and so we just got the data as the claim was in process, or it could be something more interesting, and we'll take a look at how we can analyze some of those different scenarios. All right, you can also see here we've got a big chart here which shows you over time. In this case, I've got it set to the duration metric. What do our claim durations look like over the course of the past year and a half that we've got data? So that's the overview page, all right? Now, you'll notice just from a navigation perspective, all of your different analysis modules are going to be accessible here over to the right. So as you mouse over, you get a full view as to all the different modules. You can access the majority, if not all of them, in either this view or analysis file menu. All right, so you've got access to all of these there as well. But by and large, I'll be using this right module list to get from place to place. So from our overview page, let's have a look at the process paths that the tool generated for us. Here's our timelines view. Now each of these horizontal lines represents a separate instance of the process, in this case a separate claim. I mentioned those icons. Well, here they show up as the different events that have occurred along the processing of any one of our different claims. The length of the timelines themselves are proportionate to the elapsed time. So when you scroll this, you can see some are going to span farther than others. They took longer. You've got empty spaces in certain places where essentially nothing is occurring. You're sitting and waiting for that claim to be processed. No event has happened in between these two stages. Now, if I click any one of these, I get very detailed information on this single instance of the process, this single claim. So I've got claim or timeline number X here. This could be any claim in my data set because I've got all 30,000 plus here available to me right now. And you can see I've got all of my interrelated steps that occurred. All right, and so we'll start with the superset of all the steps. We can see when first notice of loss occurred. We then went on to coverage confirmation. I've got all of my time gaps as to when that happened. And keep in mind, this is a single instance of the process. I've also got that attribute related data here as well. So who is associated with this claim? Where did it come from? What type was it? And so on. Now, as I scroll down here, you see in sequence all the different events that have been pieced together. We went through a kind of a simple example where we loaded across only one data set. If we had a more real world scenario where we loaded from multiple different data sources, this is going to reflect all the different events that occurred across all those disparate systems, right, and piece it together to give you that composite life view of the process instance of the claim, regardless of the system of record that would be responsible for any one portion of this process. All right, so this is got a full end-to-end life cycle, and you've got this for each and every claim in the data set, and you can page through them if you'd like. Okay, what the thing to point out here is subprocesses. You notice I checked that checkbox. Right now we're running statistical analysis, so this is based on stats. All right, but what we've done is we've picked out those events that are most commonly done together or as mutually exclusive events, and you can see them color-coded and grouped out here via the lines. All right, so in this insurance example use case, you might expect every claim should have a first notice of loss, a coverage confirmation, probably an adjuster on it. But not every vehicle claim would have an injury claim submitted as a part of that, or maybe a rental car issued, or a total loss with corresponding salvage information. And so you see these things automatically broken out here and grouped together as the sub or parallel processes of this overall workflow. All right, and again, automatically done by statistical analysis. If you have some kind of an identifier in your data set which signifies maybe like a task level ID where all these items should be grouped together by this task ID, we can define that here. You would just base it on your attribute field. You point to your task ID field, and all the interrelated events that took place as a part of that task would be grouped together in that way. All right, but in this way, the system does it automatically for us. So this is a single instance of the process, a single timeline.